Hello, my name is Paul Marchbanks, and this is Digging in the Dirt, with a few words about Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, released in 1989. In his third feature, Spike Lee once again directs himself in a character role, this time as the lead, one whose magnetic personality influences the actions of virtually every other character in the film. Mookie, a pizza delivery worker whose job and friendships take him into every corner of his Brooklyn neighborhood, is an everyman tasked early in the film with carrying the weight of his community on his shoulders. An older character, named DeMayer, also moves freely about the neighborhood, interacting with nearly everyone, but the grandfatherly observer who sees and hears all receives much less respect than his younger counterpart. Accordingly, he places the mantle of universal caregiver on this young man in his mid-20s. Recognizing the pivotal role Mookie regularly plays in their shared little microcosm, DeMayer tells him, "Always do the right thing, Mookie." Mookie does not ignore or mock DeMayer like virtually everyone else in the neighborhood, but he doesn't suddenly sit down and meditate on this piece of sage advice either. The audience is another matter entirely. After DeMayer speaks the title of the film, we can't help but ask ourselves from this point forward, is Mookie doing what's right? When he emboldens his boss's younger son, pacifies a cognitively disabled seller of photos, diffuses a friend's anger about a lack of representation, interferes in his sister's love life, deconstructs the hypocrisy of a loudly racist coworker, and visits his girlfriend and their son, is he consistently doing and saying the right thing? Is it possible to figure out the relative rightness of any of these characters, or to distinguish among good, better, and best, given the complexity of the lives portrayed on screen? Is it ever possible to answer moral questions with certainty? Film lovers chuckle when directors like Alfred Hitchcock and M. Night Shyamalan give themselves cameos in their own movies. Nod appreciatively when one trained as an actor successfully transitions to director, and stand in awe when someone directs themselves in a starring role. Now, it's one thing to direct yourself as a valiant historical figure who battles impossible odds, or to cast yourself as a brave parent willing to sacrifice everything for your children. It's quite another to play a character whose actions are difficult to pigeonhole, the relative heroism of whom hinges on the viewer's point of view. Spike Lee's Mookie stands at the nexus of increasing social tension, at the center of a gathering maelstrom whipped up by a racial divide and economic inequality. Does he do the right thing every step of the way? Spike Lee leaves it to us to decide. In a postmodernist world that embraces diverse systems of value and only theoretically agrees on imperatives like don't kill someone and take their stuff, most of us have become pretty timid when it comes to discussing morality. We consider so many more variables than whether someone has broken a law or injured another person. Why did they do it? What was the culprit's life experience prior to the infraction? And are there meaningful ways we can help not only the survivor, but the aggressor? Motivation matters, and motivation is a very messy matter. Let's look at a few possible angles on human motivation with a hypothetical scenario. Imagine that you're grabbing some cash at an ATM right around dusk, and half a block away you see someone getting mugged. You can't initially tell who is who, and no weapons appear to be catching the light of the fading sun, but there's quite a struggle going on. Do you get involved? As adrenaline spikes and your muscles tighten, a swarm of competing factors likely crowds your brain as you decide in seconds on a course of action. At the forefront of many minds will be a kind of materialistic cost-benefit pragmatism. What physical risks do I run by stepping forward, and are there any likely benefits? I'm wearing a spiffy outfit I just bought, which could get messed up, not to mention my body's likely to emerge with scrapes and bruises, maybe broken bones, if I intervene. What if I become a second victim and the attacker not only beats me up, but takes the money I just stuffed in my wallet? On the other hand, if I don't step in and the aggressor gets away, my own well-being might be jeopardized at some future date when I least expect it. It makes a certain practical sense to eliminate this possibility later by stepping up right now. For those driven primarily by self-preservation, by a determination to maximize pleasure and minimize pain, the decision in this bystander situation would not need to become any more complicated than this. Focusing on the bottom tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they will likely make a decision from a distance. Their choice will pivot on what they believe to be the most prudent course of action for themselves. Others will step closer and, without disregarding personal consequences, will acknowledge the interpersonal sociological dimension concerned, the ways in which just one tear in the social fabric can imperil an entire community. Such a perspective might notice that the assailant appears larger and more powerful than their victim, and be galvanized to action by indignation at the obvious power imbalance at play. Near enough now to hear their voices, the social justice advocate may be further incensed to learn that the aggressor is male, and that the cries for help are the high-pitched pleas of yet another victim of gender-based violence. And then, the onlooker recognizes the beleaguered party. She's a single mother who supports an aged and disabled parent in addition to 2 children of her own. A woman whose mixed heritage has long given those on both sides of her neighborhood's racial divide a rather sad excuse for rejecting her. When poet Joy Harjo repeats, "Everybody has a heartache," like a mantra, she has in mind, quote, all the mamas worked to the bone, gone too young, broken by the man. But also every other disrespected, dispossessed, disenfranchised individual that Harjo sees as she scans a crowded terminal in a Chicago airport. There is so much injustice in the world. So many struggling merely to survive, let alone achieve the kind of self-actualization extolled by well-educated white academics in bulletproof jobs. Surrounded by tragedy, some of us will pour ourselves into efforts at paring back measurable ills that refuse to be eliminated altogether, perhaps interrupting sexual trafficking of children, raising awareness about companies built atop slave labor, trying to disrupt patterns of domestic abuse, working to pass legislation addressing systemic inequality, or volunteering with aid organizations that assist the poor. There is a beautiful and comforting camaraderie to be found in carrying the burden of injustice alongside others, in joining marches and job strikes, collaborating with like-minded activists, and building consensus to change unjust policies in powerful corporations and governments. There's another kind of intervention which arguably proves even more difficult because, though it might involve another person like a confidant or a counselor, it's about changing ourselves more than our world. It's much more private. Others may stand by us as we dig deeply into our buried issues, but we're the ones holding the shovel. And until we do this excavation work, we'll likely remain unaware of some of the variables influencing our own actions. Let's return to the nighttime atrocity playing out in front of us. I may consciously assess the likely cost-benefit ratio of intervening, the consequences both to myself and to my community, and yet overlook some personal variables uncomfortable to think about, deeply seated anxieties and desires pulling me first in one direction, then the other. Maybe I was bullied as a kid, and the prospect of getting pushed around yet again as an adult terrifies me to my core. Alternatively, my unconscious mind might see this as a rare opportunity to confront my fear of physical aggression and possibly overcome it. Perhaps I'm as much an outsider as the woman struggling in front of me, and hope in my heart of hearts that getting involved might prove my value to other witnesses who later commend my courage and decide to reach out to me. Or, and there's no way I would ever admit this to myself, maybe I'm rather desperate for a romantic connection, and the part of me that loves stories of adventure thinks that if I prove myself on this small-scale urban battlefield, maybe word will get around and some woman looking for security will approach me. There's another way to tackle a quandary like this fictional one, an approach that builds upon all the others and elevates them. We can decide that loving ourselves and loving our neighbors are complementary goals, not mutually exclusive ones, and step forward aware of the competing, deep-seated anxieties and desires at war within us. Acknowledging that we are a mess of competing impulses, we can try to let belief in an ideal, perfect love cast out our fear and step out on faith in a grander design that would have us risk our very lives to help someone we barely know. As the existentialist philosopher Soren Kierkegaard notes, such joy in the face of suffering will look patently absurd to those bound by social ethics alone, but to him, that makes such faith no less wonderful. 3 years later, Spike Lee will release a film spotlighting Malcolm X, but he chooses to end his current film the way it began, with Smiley handling a photo of both Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. Just in case audiences don't get the suggestion that morality can be complicated, Lee follows the photo with quotes that capture each leader's very different responses to injustice. To the unresolved question of whether Mookie did the right thing in the film's final act, Lee adds another. Should those in the audience turn the other cheek or respond to injustice with aggression? And what internal and external factors should we allow to guide us? What do you think?